Balanced Approach podcast, hosted by me, Louis Padian. These podcasts are released every week, so be sure to subscribe wherever you get yours to be kept up to date. I really hope that you're enjoying the podcast so far and it's supporting you in living a healthier and happier life. So sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode. So, in today's episode, we'll be discussing why the wrong time to start might actually be the right time to start, and what might feel like being too busy, overwhelmed, and just not right might be the perfect time for you to make a change. And this is often a common barrier, roadblock for people making changes. Just life's hectic, and hopefully, as we move through this podcast, you might resonate, you might understand, and it might encourage you to just take that right step in the right direction and stop delaying that progress that we want. So most of us, or most people, I know I have definitely, have fallen for the trap of waiting for that right time, that ideal time, the perfect time to almost make a change for our health. So that might be losing weight, it might be starting running, it might be going to the gym. And we all tell ourselves the story of once things slow down at work, once I'm past this project, once I've gotten into the new year, I'll finally get back into that habit, that shape, exercising a bit more, looking after my diet. But actually, the research suggests that that often backfires, and there's what we call the procrastination trap. And studies show that delaying behavior change due to feeling overwhelmed can lead to chronic procrastination, people delaying the start, and this hindering progress and leave people feeling really discouraged that potentially something that they said that they'd do last year, the year before, they're still delaying it because life hasn't calmed down. Life doesn't calm down. And potentially that's the reason why we've got to take action right now. And I feel like people have expectations. They expect that they're going to put themselves forward. And there was this great quote that I feel fits quite nicely here. And it's, we don't rise to the level of our expectations and our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. And that systems, it could be our habits as well, interchangeable to put habits in there. And this is what people feel, is that when I've got all this free time, I'll be able to do all of these things. When actually, us putting systems in place now means that even on those tougher weeks, we still turn up, we still show up and get the work done. We still are making progress where we want to be, and everything, it doesn't happen where life takes over, things get busy, and suddenly our health falls at the wayside. And the common thing that stops people making changes is that actually they feel that they need more time, and that's never really going to be the case. We often fill that void, we fill that time. Life rarely becomes magically less busy. Responsibilities, commitments, and those sort of things tend to accumulate over time. We tend to take more on, we tend to have more responsibilities, and that doesn't really die down. So working away or finding a way to work your habits and behaviors or your healthy changes into your current situation, this is why it might be the best time. Because if you're busy now, whether you're busy or not in the future, if you're still managing to go for those walks, improve your diet, it just means that you're not going to let them fall at the wayside. So why starting now is probably a winning strategy. So the good news is that you don't need to completely overhaul your lifestyle, your schedule, to make a difference to your health. And that's what often people think, is that they often feel that they need to put 12 weeks aside where they're going to go all in on this diet, this lifestyle change, this gym program, and that's going to resolve all the issues. And then after that, they haven't really thought about it, but often people just fall back into their old habits and routines. Even if that did happen, one, it's very unlikely to happen because, like I said, 12 weeks where you can dedicate all that means that you're probably neglecting responsibilities elsewhere. Two, it's going to be quite intense and quite a big change for you, probably very unlikely to stick to it. And that isn't because people aren't capable of doing it. It just means that we're not very good at change as people. It's something that we often need to manage our expectations and understand that these changes might take a long time, and longer than we'd like, especially. So what would I suggest? Well, a smarter move would be to make small changes and have a bigger impact. And what do I mean by this is focusing on the small changes that we can make. So it doesn't have to be that you go from what you're currently eating to a completely vegan diet unless you wanted to, or you need to start intermittent fasting and cutting out and only eating 800 calories on certain days, or something really restrictive like that. It could just be, right, what's my current diet looking like? I might try and get an extra portion or two of fruit and veg in a day. I might try and increase my protein at breakfast. I might try and get for an extra 10 minutes walking per day on average. Try to be as consistent as we can with that, because if I'm setting standards are too high. And this is, I've used the example in the past, it's where people sign up to a gym and they say, right, don't go at the moment, but I'm going to go 5 days a week right now. That might last for a while, but you might feel pretty bad after not training and not doing much, going to the gym for an hour or two and doing 5 days a week. Some people will manage it, and good on them, but the vast majority of people won't. And that's not me saying because it's down to willpower, effort, or wanting to change. It's just a really big change, and our bodies don't adapt to big changes very well. So actually managing their expectations, going, right, so how often are you going at the moment? If they're not going at all, saying, right, so let's try and aim for 1 to 2 times a week. Because if we manage that consistently over time, then that's probably going to be easier to build on. Once we've got the consistency of turning up and making these smaller changes, and it doesn't have to be for very long, it could be for 10, 15 minutes, two times a week. That'd be brilliant. Because you know what? Maybe we can squeeze it out to 20, 30 minutes when we get there. Actually turning up's the hardest part, and being as consistent as we can with that. Because if you do 12 weeks of 5 days a week, so what would that be? That'd be 60 gym sessions. You go all out. Most people won't make it to 12 weeks. They're going 5 days a week. They might manage 3 or 4 weeks, but say they manage 12 weeks, they don't get the results they want, and then they go, right, I'm not going to go to the gym anymore. You'd get more benefit, or you'd get more benefit across the year that if you just went 2 times a week and managed that for a year, then you'd get 104 times you to go to the gym. So it's about that consistency of showing up will actually take us further. So like I said, starting with just 5-10 minutes of increasing your movement each day, or bringing in a little bit more fruit and veg, or having a banana in the morning rather than a chocolate bar for your snack at work, and building consistency and momentum, confidence with these over time. The next thing that I'd really say with starting small and starting now is really important, is the sooner we start, the sooner it becomes ingrained in our routine. Over time, healthier behaviors, habits become more automatic, requiring less willpower to maintain them. And prime example is one of the clients that I'm working with currently. When we go through what she's worked on and we've built it up over time, there is so much that we have to cover each week, because there's so many habits and behaviors that we've built on that we've kept moderating, kept ticking them off. And it could just be checking in with their mindfulness across the week. It could be monitoring their calories. It could be their steps. It could be getting their protein in, their 5 a day. It could be their sleep, their quality and their quantity of their sleep. And we didn't jump in straight at the deep end with this. We built that up over time. So we started with a few variables, so our tracking, our steps, brilliant. And then we brought in elements of, right, so let's try and get protein in a bit more often. And then after we got that a bit more consistent, right, let's try and work on our fruit and veg, and built up over time, because it's much easier to build in that stepped manner rather than me going, right, so here's 20 things that we're going to measure from the start. We're going to make progress in all of them straight away. That's really overwhelming. When instead of going, right, spreading myself too thinly and saying, I'm going to focus on these 2-3 things. So I might focus on getting better sleep, because I know that's really important. Might be getting more fruit and veg in. It might be getting a bit more protein in. And there's just my diet. So you know what, that's more than enough. I can work on that, and we'll leave steps for a couple of weeks time, because probably if I'm just monitoring my steps anyway, people tend to improve or move in the right direction if they're just more aware of where they are. So building up over time, but it also means that in 6 months' time that you're not battling the same battles that you're battling now, because you know what, 6 months' time you can make a hell of a lot of progress in a lot of areas just by focusing on little bits, little increments, and they'll become more natural over that time. So actually you can add as you become more consistent and confident with those tools. So a 2010 study published found that on average it takes about 66 days for a behavior to become automatic. This varies massively, because I think it was between like 3 and like 180. So it takes time to build these habits, and it's very much individual dependent. It depends on the tools, it depends where you are, what the habit is, how complex it is. There's so many things to consider. But just starting now and being as consistent as you can means that in 3, 6, 12 months time, you're pretty much likely, as long as you've built that consistency, for it to be habitual, for it to be more automatic over that time. So there's no golden rule. There's not me saying, right, if you do this for 66 days, it'll be fully ingrained, because it might be a really, really difficult habit to undertake. It might not be a daily habit either. So this is why I think starting small, starting consistent, so things that we can focus on daily, brings your focus back to what the overall goal is, which probably improving your health, maybe losing weight, getting more active, being fitter, potentially reducing your risk of some lifestyle diseases. So if you've had a chat with your doctor and you're pre-diabetic, saying, right, actually, I don't want to develop into type 2 diabetes, or I want to try and get out of this blood glucose range, that's fantastic, because you know what, if we can have 2 or 3 points throughout the day that we are making ourselves more mindful of habits, behaviors that align with moving in that direction, then we're more consistent, more likely to be more consistent with them as well. So when we look at this, we look at trying to be as consistent as we can. We talk about little and often. So this is why I wouldn't say having a complete diet overhaul is the way forward, because that's a big change. Actually just going, right, where am I currently now? What areas are probably the areas that I could probably improve on the most? How can I improve them slightly? So if someone's getting in, not having any breakfast at all, and they find that they're starving at lunch, which a lot of people do, then potentially introducing some breakfast can be high in fibre, high in protein, having some whole grains in there, something that they're actually looking forward to, which I think is more important than most things. Something that's tasty, easy, convenient, easy to store, potentially could batch cook for the week, potentially batch cook and have a few things that you can add to it to make it a bit more variety throughout the week, but trying to work with someone's current circumstances rather than suggesting, right, so you're going to be living on chicken, broccoli and rice for this week, because people can stick to that. People definitely can. I've seen people stick to it for a very long time, but they don't learn anything in that process. They don't particularly enjoy it. And if, to be honest, that probably helps with some of the weight loss if you're not enjoying it, because people turn up to meals. I know when I did ketogenic diets in the past, which I wouldn't recommend, after a day or two, you just aren't looking forward to food. You've got no food motivations. You actually don't really eat as much because you just can't be bothered with it. There's no sweetness, there's no carbohydrates in the meals, and it's not very appealing. It's usually quite salty, especially the foods that I was eating at the time. So having small changes that you can do consistently and be more mindful of helps build up over time. And same with that physical activity as well. So even just a short exercise or physical, going for a short walk a couple of days a week, we know can improve your health and well-being, but also help manage your weight as well. So taking action, and what would the tips be from my side? I know we've discussed a lot throughout this podcast episode, but I thought best to have a few takeaways, which we're going to have to fall. So first of all, identify these tiny habits. Focus on small, achievable goals. Like we said, start with 10 minutes of walking, or doing a few press-ups, or introducing a bit more fruit and veg into your diet. And when I say introduce fruit and veg into your diet, that doesn't naturally mean that you're going to have to stop eating other foods. Actually, just moving it in alongside it will probably automatically reduce the amount of other foods that you eat. So commonly adding more fibre to your breakfast, so adding a portion or two of fruits to your breakfast cereals, if you're having porridge in the morning, or even just having it alongside. So if you're having some toast and having some fibre with it, with like a banana or some sliced apple with some nut butter or something, it's probably going to make you less likely to snack in between meals, because you're going to be more full from that meal, potentially more satisfied, especially if you can get a bit of some fats in there or some things that are going to tickle your taste buds that you enjoy. And that's how we build those tiny habits over time, and having a bit of variety, having a bit of fun, things that we're going to look forward to and we can see ourselves doing long term, and progressing with them as we go. Second of all, finding little pockets of time. So utilising the short breaks throughout the day for bits of movement, for taking the stairs if you can, or potentially doing a little bit of mobility work or something like that, and finding those little instances. So potentially going for a short walk around the block if you've got a bit of time between meetings, or even in your lunch break. Usually you sit down at a desk, you might sit down for half an hour or so, however long you've got for your lunch break, but you might say, right, 15 minutes of that I'm going to spend going for a walk, and I can still talk to my friends, I can still do what I need, or I've got to run an errand during my lunch break. Then just incorporating those little bits of activity, especially after meals, can be really useful as well, especially people who struggle to manage their blood sugars, like pre-diabetics or type 2 diabetics. Going for a short walk after your meals can really help with managing that as well. We've discussed about habit stacking previously, but a big part of it is about the convenience. Making better choices more accessible. So having fruit out on the side, and potentially the biscuits, the chocolates and things that are a bit easier to overeat on, a bit more calorie dense, at the back of the cupboard, out of sight. This will make it easier for you to make a better decision. And the next episode we talk about willpower and how that's really, really important. But it's all about that temptation, and we'll just wear away at that all day, at that willpower. And it just makes it that bit more difficult. With exercise and things, something that I still do that I learned a few years ago is, if I'm planning to exercise early in the morning, which I do, so for those of you who don't know, I work in the NHS full time, and actually I've condensed my days down from 5 days to 4 days. So I work 4 quite long days, 8 till 6, and with a half-hour lunch throughout the day. So when I'm going into the office, that means I have to be out of the house just after 7 o'clock in the morning, and I might not get home until 6:30, 7 if I'm still in the office at that point. Most of the time I come home during the day. But anyway, one thing I'll do is that if I prefer training in the morning, I don't really enjoy having a full day at work and then coming home to go for a run or train. So what I'll do the night before is I'll get my kit ready. I'll make sure it's all laid out. I'll make sure kitchen's tidy so it's less of a nightmare to walk into early in the morning when I'm still bleary-eyed to make my coffee. And I'll get my work stuff ready as well. So you know what, in the morning, it just makes everything a little bit easier, and that's past me looking after future me. And I think that's a really, really good way to sort of help me make better decisions, because just like most people in the morning, I'd much rather stay in bed and get a bit more sleep some days. And it's not as enjoyable, but it is now getting a bit brighter, but especially when in the winter, it's not a great prospect looking out the window and it's raining sideways and it's cold, it's wet, it's windy, and you've got a run to do, a hill sprint or something like that, or you've got a gym session to go to. It's about making it as easy as possible for you to make the best decision possible. So things like laying your clothes out, things like getting your shoes ready, getting your stuff ready ahead of time, prepping breakfast, having some snacks on the go, some things that you're going to look forward to, making sure you've got an audiobook or a podcast that you're looking forward to download. All these things are just making it easier for me to make better decisions. Last but not least is focus on progress and not perfection. This is so important, and I could do a whole podcast on this episode, that often people think about what's the best food that I should be eating, what's the best exercise I could be doing. Well, there's no point no point signing up to the gym at the moment because I can't go 5 days a week, which what I need to do, that's what I want to do. But actually, you might be best off going once or twice a week. People can make really good progress by going once or twice a week. And often people feel like, no, that's not the best I can do. Well, you know what's good enough? And good enough is good enough. Same with their diet, that my diet won't be perfect or I need to find the right perfect diet. When actually just working from where we currently are and making small progress steps forward consistently will take us to a much better place, much quicker and much more sustainably than waiting around to find the perfect diet, because the research isn't very clear on what the perfect way to eat is. There's lots of pros and cons across the way, and if you spend your whole time doing that, you'll be looking forever and not actually taking action. So taking action is hugely important, and understanding that just taking the first step. And there's a real good I can't remember the quote, and it's from the Fox, the Boy and the Horse. It's a great sort of little book, and that's got some great well written and drawn. I can't remember, Charlie something. Anyway, I digress. And the main part of one of the quotes is that the boy doesn't know where to go, doesn't know where they're leading in the forest, and it's dark. And he says, well, I don't know what to do. And he basically says, well, can you see your next step? And he says, yeah. And I said, well, just take that then. And I think I've absolutely butchered that quote, but I think that's all we need to do is just don't worry about what we have to do further down the line. Let's just worry about what we can do now, and we can take that right step in the right direction. So hopefully overall that's given you a bit of a understanding and actionable tool set and tips on why the wrong time currently, if you're feeling busy and overwhelmed, might be the best time to do it, because you will never not be busy. You will fill your time with something, and actually working now means that you won't rise the level of your expectations but fall to the level of your system. So we'll try and get those systems in place so that whenever you are feeling busy, which will be most of the time, we're still able to make progress and move towards where we want to be. So there you have it. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. If you have any questions, queries, or would like to reach out to me, please do. I am at Louis Padian Nutrition, which is at LOUISPADIAN Nutrition on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all other social media platforms. If you're looking for support in achieving your goals and living a healthier, happier, and more balanced life in the process, click the link below and inquire about working with me. Remember to subscribe to the Balanced Approach podcast wherever you're listening for more insightful episodes, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.